So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto and Transformer Got Harem? So let's start the series. It had always been fun for Naruto to take walks outside and in nature, even if he was a technology genius at the young age of 12 and loved to stay inside and work on electronics. It was always nice to just go out for a walk and just see where his feet took him. He and his mom had just moved into a new house in Jasper, Nevada, the middle of freaking nowhere, for his mom's job as an Air Force pilot. She had been transferred to work under a man named William Fowler, a slightly overweight African American man that had worked as an Army Ranger and now ran a new and secret department of the Gov. Naruto didn't know what the department did, considering it was a secret section of the Gov, but he knew that his mom worked as a chauffeur for him. Even if he thought it wasn't a very prestigious job for an ace pilot like his mom, she had told him that it was a very well-paying job for a simple and easy one. So because of that, he was able to accept her having a job, even if he thought it was a job she was overqualified for. Plus, it also allowed him to spend more time with the most important person in the world to him, his mother. Regardless, he was dressed in simple pants, brown hiking boots, a jacket, and a rucksack that had his laptop, water, and snacks. He was following a path in a deep canyon that was famous for Jasper and all of its mesas. He was searching for a suitable place to halt when he sensed an inward pull that compelled him to pursue it. His eyes were glowing blue, too, with the power that had run in his family for over a century, energon. He looked down and saw that his hands were shining a bright blue, so he pulled out his phone and looked at it. He decided to trust this intuition and let it guide him to whatever it was that was calling to him, directing and pushing him to find it, and possibly providing support if needed. All he knew was that he was going to follow this feeling, and if he had to guess, he had followed it. He had no idea how long or how far he had to travel. Upon arriving to the canyon's base, he was greeted by a huge metal mausoleum that was noticeably bigger than any Jasper home. It was all centered around one symbol, which resembled a neutral face composed of bars and lines. It was somewhat humanoid, but Naruto knew better. He had seen that symbol for as long as he could remember, along with another that was, in contrast, sharp and menacing, while this one seemed to be the symbol of a stoic protector. It seemed to have overlapping pieces of metal and sharp designs. It had to do with the beginnings of his family's energon skills and was one of the symbols that had been handed down through the generations. He could see that this was the cause of the pulling feeling he was feeling when he glanced up at the enormous mausoleum. He didn't know what it wanted from him, but he suspected he would soon learn. He walked over to the enormous tomb, put his palm on it, and waited for something to happen. Nothing occurred at first, and then nothing occurred once more. Naruto made the decision to stand there and reflect for 5 minutes. The moment he got there, the pull stopped and he was able to fully control his body again. His body's energon relaxed and went back to sleep until its user summoned it. Considering that, is it not feasible that he required the energon active in order to unlock the tomb? That's exactly what he did. He called forth the vast reservoir of pure energy within himself, and the power caused him to glow blue. He was surrounded by a blue aura that radiated about half a foot away from him, and this time it wasn't only his hands and eyes. With the power that had run in his family's bloodline for generations, Naruto walked back up to the tomb and placed his hand on it. This time there was a much different reaction. The sharp metal plates started to retract into themselves, starting at where his hand had been and retracting into the walls of the tomb, making a giant doorway for. The opening into the tomb was about 15 feet tall, obviously meant for something much larger than Naruto, or any possible human current, or ancient could possibly be. When the doorway had finished opening, Naruto walked inside the dark cavern-like tomb to see why he was pulled to this place. As soon as he walked in, he saw it. The reason that he had been called to this tomb that was obviously millions of years old, and yet millennium more advanced than anything that had been or could be made on Earth. It was a giant metal figure that was humanoid in appearance, and was colored primarily blue. It had giant jets on its back and sharp small wings below. Its face was a yellowish-orange color, and he just had an overall appearance as if it was built ready to take on anything. For a better idea of what it looks like, look up either Nominus Prime, or look at the profile picture for this story. The metal giant was lying on a giant metal slab that was raised about 10 feet off the ground, and Naruto, being the 5-foot even 12-year-old that he was, he kinda couldn't reach. Straight face, but being the total badass that he was and a very active 12-year-old along with being a technological genius, he could climb up to the top of the metal platform where the metal giant was. With that, Naruto took a few steps back to get a running start, and then took off. As soon as he was about 6 inches from the platform, he jumped and grabbed onto the metal plates. He was lucky that the metal plates that made up the entire tomb weren't bladed and only had sharp shapes. Naruto looked down and saw that he had jumped up about 2.5 feet, a new personal best, and with that he started to climb up the platform. It took him about 15 minutes to reach the top, and at the 7-minute mark his arms were starting to burn and shake, so the last 8 minutes weren't very pleasant. After he reached the top, Naruto just flopped onto the ground and laid on his back, panting and trying to rid of the jelly feeling in his arms. After he finally stopped panting and his arms weren't as bad as they were, he sat up and got to his feet to look at the giant up close and in detail. He had to admit he already knew that the giant was a marvel of science and technology, but this thing up close and being able to look at it in detail just Choi. That's all. Whoa. The locking mechanisms on the giant suggested that it could change its shape but also allow it to stand up to some unbelievably strong hits while in its humanoid form and still be limber, and able to dodge hits quickly, and then change its form in an instant to whatever its other form could be. The very idea of what the giant could do was staggering, especially if someone that didn't have good intentions got their hands on it and took advantage of the technology the robot had at its disposal just by existing, never mind if it was operational. He had heard some mutterings on some online platforms that there was a group known as MECH out there stealing advanced technology for their own ends, whatever they may be, and Naruto had a feeling that they weren't good. Anyway, the robot looked to be in semi-decent condition, just without any life inside of it like its tomb, bodily design, and the weapons on it suggested. With that, Naruto walked over to its head and started to look for an access point so that he could plug in his laptop into it and see what had happened to it. He eventually found an access point into its head, and after finally prying it open with a straight piece of metal that was on the same platform the robot was, he looked inside and tried to find a plug-in. It wasn't hard to find multiple points into its memory core, but they all looked weird and probably wouldn't connect with his computer. He decided to try something that he had only heard in legends that his ancestors were said to be able to do and his mom was able to do to a smaller extent: create solid constructs out of the energon in his body. His ancestors were said to wield glowing blue weapons that could cut through almost anything. His mom could do it as well, but she mostly focused on using the ability to save money on buying knives for cooking and pots and pans, and the occasional multitude of chains whenever Naruto did something really stupid, and he tried to get away from his mother's horrible, unbelievably painful punishments. So Naruto crawled into the robot's head and studied the access point inside its head. After finally thinking that he had a decent idea of the shape of the access point, he called upon his energon. He focused on the shape inside of his head of the shape of the access point and a cord to connect it to his computer. He didn't know how long he sat there, but it felt like a while. All he did was focus on the shape of the access point, and then he felt it. A weight in his hands that he could feel was made up of the energon inside of him. He felt it get a little bit heavier and longer until eventually it stopped. Naruto opened his eyes and looked down into his hands and saw a glowing blue cord with the correct shape to fit into the robot's access point and a USB connector on the other end. He couldn't believe it. He had done it. He had created an energon construct at the age of 12 when it had taken his mother being 16 for her to be able to do it, and she was hailed as a prodigy within their family. He continued to look at the construct until he finally remembered the reason he created the construct in the first place came crashing back to him. He took the end that could plug into the robot and pushed it into the access point and felt it slide right into place and stay in there snugly. He then took the end that could connect into his computer's USB port and plugged that in. He flipped open his computer and looked at the image on the screen that had come up as soon as he opened it. It started playing images in rapid succession. Naruto could make out most of them, and it seemed as if the robot used to be extremely important. But then he saw something that ruined the image of this robot being an honorable and benevolent ruler. He saw that the reason he was the leader of his race was because of a thing that they kept referring to as the Matrix, but then Naruto saw an image where it showed that the robot had forged the Matrix himself for selfish reasons, to gain power, prestige, and oppress the lower class system of his planet. He lied to the people of his planet, giving them false hope about them having a leader who was chosen by their ancient leaders and was a wise and fair leader. He took all the beliefs that the people of his planet put in him and completely shattered them and their hope. At that moment, Naruto decided to rebuild the robot without bringing back the life that had been inside of it. Even while he might not be divine, he recognized that the mind would have to be left in the hereafter while the body could and would need to be put back into working order. After deciding on this, he got up and started working, looking at what needed to be replaced and repaired. Time to start working. It had been about 5 years since Naruto had found the body of who he found out was Nominous Prime. He always put quotations around the title of Prime whenever he was thinking about Nominous. He had taken the most sacred title of his planet and used it for his own selfish gain. Since the day that he had found Nominous, he had been working on repairing the robot's body as often as he could whenever he had the chance. He had made pretty good strides in restoring the bot's body as best he could. And so far it had gone without too much difficulty. The body was in fairly decent condition, so it didn't need a lot of repair. But the repairs that it needed took a long time to repair and were extremely complicated to fix, although they would have been near impossible to fix without the help of his Energon. So far the hardest part though was Naruto trying to figure out how he was going to pilot the robot once he had gotten him fully repaired. He had figured that he could pilot from inside, but with how many parts move when the robot transforms, at least from what the diagnosis and computer scenarios seemed to say, and he wasn't willing to die on his computer possibly being wrong. He had thought about making a psychic link between him and the empty body, but the technology needed for that was out of reach for him and the entire planet. So he was stuck with just trying to make sure that the body was in working order for when he finally found a way to pilot the body. Naruto is currently wearing a black jacket over a red t-shirt with a swirl seal on the back that represents his family's last name, Uzumaki Whirlpool. Over the past 2 years, he has grown significantly in height, reaching a good 5 feet 10 inches. He has also gained a lean muscular build from hiking to Nominous Tomb frequently, and lifting heavy metal pieces to fix Nominous' body. Apart from that, not much had changed in his life. His mother was still working hard at a job that was below her skill level, but she was still the best mother he could have. During those 5 years, Naruto also turned 16, and now he is 17. Naturally, he wanted to drive, and he got his license as soon as he was legally able to do so. However, he and his mother couldn't afford a new or used car for themselves, so he decided to be responsible and got a job at a local electronics store across the street from a fast food restaurant. At the electronics store where he worked, it was a slow day, and nobody needed new earbuds, computers, or anything else. Naruto had to admit that he was rarely bored and that when he was, he could usually find something to do. Luckily, his 5-hour shift was almost over, 3, 2, 1, and he was officially off. It was time to head out, see if his mother was home, and convince her to eat ramen tonight. He heard a grunt coming from the back room that was his boss's office, so he opened the door and went home. He was considering getting a milkshake before he rode his skateboard home when he noticed something, a beautiful dark blue Suzuki motorcycle that appeared to be built for speed, going from 0 to 60 miles per hour in a matter of seconds. The fact that the person riding it was motionless, despite the fact that she was moving at about 25 mph, not much, but enough to make any garment flutter a little. And third, he saw it. It was small and unnoticeable unless you knew what to look for. It and were always on the lookout for it, the Autobots. He saw the one thing that finally confirmed his suspicions when the motorcycle and its rider pulled into the parking lot of the fast food restaurant. The rider suddenly disappeared. Finally, he saw a Cybertronian face to Headlights, perhaps? Whatever. He decided to approach the motorcycle, and as soon as he did, he had to admire the vehicle form that this Cybertronian had chosen. It was sleek and quick, and it looked kind of unobtrusive. As he got closer to the motorcycle, he glanced down at it and spoke the one statement that should elicit an instant reaction. He said, "Never thought I would see a Cybertronian here in good old middle of nowhere Jasper, Nevada." Expecting some kind of reaction, perhaps disbelief, maybe laughter, or maybe anger at being found by a human somehow, but he was unprepared for the reaction he got. "Human, what did you say?" It sounded feminine when he heard it from the motorcycle. This was a rare event because Nominus had only seen a few female Cybertronians in his memories. "I said that I never thought I would see a Cybertronian in the middle of a small town out in the middle of nowhere," replied the man. He heard her reply, "Listen to me, human," in a cold voice full of anger, annoyance, and a trace of melancholy. "I'm not sure why you're talking to me or even how you know my race, but I'd advise you to leave and never see me again for your own safety." "Strange." "Sorry, I can't do that. Me and my family have been searching for you guys for over 100 generations. I'm not letting you get away without helping me understand something that I need to figure out." He could tell that the Autobot was about to respond to the strange comment with a cold remark with the intent of getting him to leave her alone, when suddenly she stopped. Naruto was confused. He had just met this Autobot, but he could already tell that she was a strong, albeit small, warrior that wasn't used to not being listened to and very strong-willed in any situation. Confused as to why she had stopped before she could retort to his comment, he started to look around the parking lot. Not seeing anything, he turned around and looked out onto the street about 60 yards away, and that's when he saw them, sleek purple and black cars that all looked the same. As he continued to inspect the cars, he saw the one thing that he hoped that was just a scare tactic devised by the adults of the family to get the children to listen to their parents and other adults. He saw the symbol that was feared and told to beware of in his family. He saw the symbol of the Decepticons. Fuck/scrap. He and the Autobot said at the same time. "What are we going to do?" As he turned around and looked down at her, he asked in a worried tone. "Nothing, you leave and they'll follow me and we'll never see each other again," she said hurriedly. "Scrap, okay, get on, we need to get out of here," she said, nodding mostly to himself as he backed up and got onto the disguised Autobot, gripping the handlebars tightly, ready for anything. As soon as he got on and was holding on, he felt himself moving at incredible speeds towards the cons, who served in between two cons and fled as quickly as they could. He was about to tell her that he would go, but that he would find her again and they would have that conversation. After 5 minutes or so, Naruto turned around, still holding tight to the handlebars, to see if they were being followed, and when they weren't, he sighed in relief. A few more minutes later, he saw that they were entering an alley, and after they were safely inside, he dismounted the Autobot and took a step back. He had to admit that he preferred her form over Nominus because he saw her transform into her true form while he was away. She was almost as tall as the buildings that surrounded them, dark blue with a light pink headpiece, feminine looking for a robot, and seemed to have been built with stealth in mind. When she was done changing, she knelt down in front of him, bringing their height difference as close to eye as possible, and said, "My name is RC, member of the Autobots, and I would like to know how you know of my kind." What?" murmured Naruto wryly as he noticed the Autobot RC glaring at him. "You heard me, human. How do you know of my race?" she repeated, and Naruto could tell that she wanted an answer immediately or he might be stepped on. Despite his passion for adventure and living life to the fullest, Naruto didn't think that avoiding an irate female Autobot's foot would be a good way to try and start a relationship with the Autobots because he didn't answer her questions. "Well, I know of you guys from a couple of ways, but the most prominent one is from stories that have been passed down in my family for generations," he answered as fast as he could to escape being squashed as she narrowed her eyes at him in shock and distrust at what he was telling her. Naruto nodded, climbed on top of her, and clung to her, hoping that the stories his family had told him about the Autobots being kind protectors were true. We'll talk more about this, but first I think that we should go back to my base so my leader can hear about this, she explained as she got back up and changed back into a motorcycle. As soon as he got on, they took off again, but this time they drove all the way out of town and into the desert. Naruto noticed that the sun was setting, so he pulled his phone out of his pocket to check the time. He discovered that it was almost 8, and his curfew was 9, so he had to call his mother immediately to let her know that he might be home late. He put his phone back in his pocket and turned back to the road when he heard RC say something into a radio to her team. Ratchet, I could use a ground bridge. Also tell Optimus that he'll want to see and hear what our guest has to say, she said. Over RC's communication channels, he heard an old, tired voice ask, RC, what are you talking about? What guests? Did you find another one of our comrades? No, I'm afraid that I haven't. Let's just say that I met a human of interest, and I'm taking him in to talk to Optimus because of a comment he made, she said to her fellow soldier. Ugh, humans, very well, locking onto your coordinates, now, he said, as a swirling green portal materialized right in front of them. Naruto was immediately awed by the swirling greens and blues that made up the portal, and the 15 seconds they spent inside were incredible. He could tell that this was just the beginning of the amazing sights he would be witnessing. Well, looks like the gang's all here, said RC, changing back to her humanoid form. Indeed, RC, and I see you brought a guest with you of human origin, replied the tall man he assumed to be the boss. The senior, seasoned medic remarked, Humans, bah, and then went back to work on their advanced computers. As the leader introduced himself, Naruto just stood there in wonder. My name is Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots being from the planet Cybertron many light years away. I welcome you to our home, he said, as he exuded a sense of leadership and felt a thrumming that connected with the energon inside his body. As the other Autobots in the room processed what he had just said, he could hear their gasps and see the amazement on Optimus's face. It's good to meet you, Optimus Prime, Naruto remarked. I had all but given up hope that there would ever be a truly worthy successor of Primus and the original 13th's will and power. I never thought I would see the day that I would meet the bot that holds the matrix of leadership within them. They were stunned to see that a human knew about the Matrix and seemed unsurprised by the sight of giant robots, and even if they were still ignorant of it, the way this human spoke suggested that he was aware of something. Optimus Prime said, This is a great surprise. I never thought that a human would be taking our existence so well, and even have knowledge of the Matrix that I hold within me. How could a human know so much about his species and one of their most sacred artifacts? Naruto said. Yes, well, you learn a lot when you have lived the life that I have, admitting that the situation was unusual from every angle but his own. Tell me your name, human, and your tale so I may understand how you know of my people's existence and of one of the most sacred relics of our planet, Optimus ordered, his voice seeming to veer slightly toward this apparently informed human. Optimus Prime, it would be my pleasure. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and my story begins many generations ago, Naruto said, looking up at Optimus with a look of knowing respect. Optimus was taken aback by the respect a human teenager was showing him, using his full title and saying it with a hint of awe. Naruto then explained to the Autobots how he was drawn to a Cybertronian tomb that held the remains of Nominus Prime, how he watched the memories inside Nominus' memory center and learned about their culture and artifacts, how he discovered that Nominus had lied about his Prime title and used it for his own self-interest, how he chose to repair Nominus' body in the hopes of using it to protect the planet if the Decepticons ever returned to Earth, and finally, how he had met RC up to this point. The Autobots were all stunned by what they had just been told, and it took them a few minutes to process the information. Even Optimus, who was usually calm, collected, and in control, had his mouth open in shock and awe at what they had just been told. He was sure that Ratchet would have called Naruto a liar, and that everything he had said had been made up. But everything he had said either had evidence to support the claims or could be proven. That is quite a story, Naruto. I would say that it would be impossible for a human to know all of this, but obviously that statement would not be true, Optimus said, continuing to gaze at the human in front of him. Ratchet stepped up abruptly after realizing what Naruto had said. Naruto, is it true that you and your family can produce and manipulate energon in your bodies? Ratchet asked in a giddy tone, and Naruto turned from Optimus to him and smiled as he raised his hand and summoned the energon inside his body. A bright blue glow shot up from it, and about a foot into the air immediately after he did so. Ratchet then grabbed what he thought was a scanner and held it down to Naruto while he took readings from his hand, and he was shocked by what he saw. The readings were off the scale, and with the amount that he was putting out at the moment, they could power the ground bridge for months. In addition, he deduced that Naruto could power and supply them with energon for years if he let loose just once in a controlled setting where all the energon he was holding off could be absorbed. Naruto didn't even look tired. Instead, he seemed to be holding back. Optimus looked down at Naruto and scratched his chin in surprise, awe, and happiness at what he was seeing from this human. Optimus, the amount he's putting out right now could power the ground bridge for months, Ratchet said, adding that Naruto was smiling with joy at being complimented on something and that the advantage he could give them over the Decepticons was astounding. The only issue was what would happen if the cons found him and were able to get their hands on. Optimus just stood there weighing their options while Ratchet scanned Naruto, and the other members of Team Prime got to know him. Naruto, I have a favor for you, Optimus stated. The quantity of energon you just postponed was astounding and could aid us in our battle against the Decepticons. We are in desperate need of energon. In a moment of need, would you be prepared to assist us? He didn't want to endanger Naruto, but he had already been seen by some Decepticon grunts, and they probably snapped a picture of him. If Naruto worked with them, they could at least keep him safe while he gave them energon to help put an end to this conflict. Optimus smiled as he looked at Naruto. I would be glad to help. My family has spent generations trying to find you to get your help and see if we can help you in your war against the Decepticons. All I ask in return is that you help me finish repairs on the body of Nominus so I can use it to help you fight and help me find a way to pilot said body. So do we have a deal? Said Naruto. Optimus thought about it some more and concluded that if he agreed, they would get almost infinite energon, another fighter that was shaped like a lyre to their race, and if he remembered correctly, Nominus's ability to transform into a Cybertronian jet, which would help level the playing field because they didn't have any aerial support against the Decepticons. Very well, Naruto, I will accept your proposal, Optimus Prime said to Naruto Uzumaki. However, once we have repaired Nominus' body for you to use in battle while we are out in the field, I expect you to follow all of my instructions in the letter. You also need to have a team member with you at all times when you are not in the base. So, do we have an agreement? He leaned down and held out a finger for Naruto to shake in order to seal the deal. Without hesitation, Naruto put up his hand and grabbed the outstretched finger, and the two shook and shouted, "Bargain!" with the iconic foxy smile of Optimus. It had been an eventful day for Naruto, especially considering he had met the legendary heroes his family had told stories about for generations. After he had been let go from Ratchet's constant probing and questions about how much energon he could generate, and whatnot, he told them that he had to go so his mom wouldn't kill him for being out so late without telling his mom. Since the Autobot base was guarded against incoming and outgoing signals that hadn't been adapted to allow them to pass by. The shielding. When he was ready to leave, Optimus had come up to him and told him he had to have one of the Autobots go with him to make sure that he stayed safe should the Decepticons find out about his existence. With that, Optimus had turned around and pointed to the red bot who he had learned was named Cliff Jumper and told him to go with Naruto and act as his guardian. With that, Cliff had transformed, had Naruto get in, and they left through the ground bridge that Ratchet had opened. It hadn't taken them long for them to arrive at Naruto's house, and luckily before his mom got home. As they pulled up into the driveway of the house, Naruto turned to Cliff Jumper and asked him, So what's your role on the Autobot team? Naruto turned away, smiling at his guardian's response, and went to the house to sleep. Cliffjumper responded, I'm an awesome badass warrior. And Naruto could hear the smug smile in his voice as he filled in the energon-generating human. Hey Cliff, don't change yet because it's probably my mom if you see another car pull into the driveway. Because he didn't want his mother to get involved in the fight and make him stop seeing Team Prime due to the danger, Naruto asked the fighter, but he decided to keep it a secret for the time being. Yeah, sure Naruto, whatever you want, but if that car transforms and starts blasting my paint job, all bets are off, responded Cliffjumper. Nodding, Naruto opened the door to his house and walked in. As soon as he entered, he took off his jacket and hung it up on the rung by the front door and kicked off his shoes and started his way upstairs towards his room. The house that he lived in with his mom wasn't big by any standard, but it was comfortable and had 2 stories, which he loved when he was younger, since their first house was only 1 story and he'd always wanted to live in a house with stairs. The top floor held his room, his mom's room, a linen closet for towels and such, and finally a medium-sized bathroom with a toilet, a decent-sized sink, a shower/bathtub combo that took up most of the space. The bathroom was next to the linen closet, with the bedrooms just a few feet past that. Naruto's room was on the left, whereas the bathroom and closet were on the right, and his mom's room was at the very back of the hallway, allowing for it to have more space to be a proper master bedroom. After walking past the bathroom, he finally reached his bedroom and opened the door and walked inside to go to sleep after a long and hectic day. At one point in the night, Naruto woke up to find his mother had come home, kissed him on the forehead, and said, I love you too, before getting up from her floor and leaving the room, closing his door behind her. Naruto briefly wondered why she hadn't asked about the red muscle car in the driveway, but he fell back asleep before he could fully analyze the potential responses. Naruto awoke at 9 a.m. on Sunday. He awoke to the sound of a honking horn that was coming from the front of the house, where he saw what looked like a red roof of a car. After getting up and opening the window, he saw that the car that was honking was actually Cliffjumper, and it seemed like he was waiting for him to get the hell up and get ready so they could head to the Autobot base. Naruto looked down at Cliff and made a motion that showed he would need a few minutes to get ready. After a revving of the engine from Cliffjumper, Naruto closed the window, turned around and started to gather some clean clothes for him to wear after he was done with his shower. As Naruto was walking the few needed feet to the bathroom, he heard his mom's CPAP machine making its intake and exhaling noises. The reason his mom even used the damn thing was because her snoring was so bad that when they had first moved to Jasper, after a few nights of her snoring, they started to get complaints from neighbors about the strange growling noises they were hearing at night, and how it was keeping them up at night. After another week of snoring, the entire neighborhood had gathered and gotten a court order from the city for Kushina to get a CPAP machine so that they all could get some sleep finally. And thus the CPAP machine had been introduced into their lives. With Kushina's begrudging usage, they hadn't gotten a single complaint about her noisy snoring since. As he stood in the shower, letting the water run down his body, Naruto wondered why Cliffjumper had woken him up so early so they could reach the Autobot base. He hoped it wasn't so Ratchet could test him further. Maybe they were going to do something else, like go find some Decepticons and smash their heads. Whatever they were going to do, he had better hurry before Cliffjumper started honking his horn again and woke up his mother from her well-earned sleep so he could try to find out what was making the noise and crush it like a ball of tin foil for disturbing her. Naruto turned off the water and started drying his body and hair before putting on his clothes for the day. Cliffjumper angrily exclaimed, "What the hell took you so long, kid? I've been waiting for 10 minutes. As Naruto, his hair slightly damp, left the house wearing a black shirt, black combat boots, an orange and black tracksuit jacket with his family crest on the back in red, the Shippuden jacket, and another pair of black jeans. A/N. For the comment about girls taking a long time, I'm just basing this on the number of girls who arrived late to my first hour when I was in school, and from what my female friends have told me. I'm sorry if I offended anyone." With Naruto buckled in Cliffjumper, they reversed out of the parking lot and started to head towards the edge of town so they could ground bridge without being noticed by the rest of the population. "Shut up, it's not like I knew at what time you wanted me to wake up, so you woke me on a Saturday, and I only get to sleep in on the weekends, so lay off, and me taking 10 minutes is actually pretty good, just be glad I'm not a human girl my age who takes ages to get ready," Naruto replied casually, not seeing the big deal. Cliffjumper requested a ground bridge after they had been out of town for around 25 minutes. "Hey Ratchet, can you hook up a bot with a ground bridge to base?" Sif asked, and with a slight groan from his communications, they drove through a ground bridge that appeared 10 feet ahead of them. Naruto was still amazed that the Autobots had this kind of technology at their disposal, even though it was the third time he had done so. After a few seconds, they emerged from the other end of the portal into the base, and Naruto got out of the bot and looked around once more in awe of the space, as it could house all of the Autobots and anything else they might need. "So what's the word, Doc?" he asked, surveying his surroundings. "Optimus wants you to go out and scan some areas for any sign of Energon," Ratchet replied as he began entering the coordinates for Cliffjumper's fuel run assignment. Refusing to move, Cliffjumper tossed his head and arms back in pain. "Why do I have to go out and look for Energon?" he said. "We got the kid now, and he can create tons of Energon. While it is true that our new human ally has the ability to produce Energon, we must always be searching for Energon deposits if for no other reason so the Decepticons do not get their hands on them," Optimus said as he entered the base's main room as Cliffjumper was complaining. In an attempt to kill time alone, Cliffjumper replied, "Yes, sir, can I at least take the kid or RC with me to make it a little more bearable?" Hoping to get his partner to suffer with him or, at the very least, the child he was protecting, so they could bond and spend some time together. "While I would like to allow the backup you requested, RC is on her own recon mission right now and unfortunately won't be back until later. As for our young human ally Ratchet, me, and young Naruto are going to go see what we can do about repairing the body of Nominus so that Naruto may begin to aid us as soon as possible in our endeavors," Optimus responded with a heartfelt apology. "Fine," Cliffjumper said. "Open her up, Ratchet," as he changed and started to run his engine a little in readiness. Naruto warned Cliffjumper to use caution as he drove through the opening of the ground bridge. "So you need me to give you the coordinates to Nominus' tomb?" Naruto stated to Optimus after Cliffjumper had left and the ground bridge had closed. "I wouldn't want to lose my guardian so soon after getting him." With an offering hand, Optimus took Ratchet's and said, "That would be useful, my young friend." Next to their primary computer interface, Ratchet was waiting for the coordinates of the tomb. "Just tell Ratchet the coordinates, and we will ground bridge there." Ratchet went to Optimus and said, "Who will operate the ground bridge while we are away?" Naruto nodded and started to give him the coordinates that would get them extremely close to the fake Prime's tomb. Optimus said, "I will ask Bumblebee to return to base. He is just a few clicks away and should be able to operate it while we are away." And Ratchet nodded, agreeing that the temporary worker for the ground bridge was acceptable. The vocally disabled scout was young and energetic enough to manage the ground bridge should the need arise. Ratchet then set the timer for the space bridge to close a few seconds after they emerged, and as Optimus transformed, he opened his door to allow the young, Energon-infused human to accompany him. By the time Naruto had climbed up and taken the driver's seat, the portal had opened and was calling them to enter, and they began their journey to the body of a fake Prime and Great Deceiver so that he could do good after death. After exiting the portal and having Naruto give them directions to them tomb since they were still a ways away, they finally reached the great metal tomb. Naruto hopped out of Optimus as he and Ratchet transformed. The tomb was sealed so that no one other than Naruto or someone who had access to a large Energon cube could enter. Naruto walked up to the tomb and placed his hand on the tomb and called upon the vast quantities of Energon inside his body and focused it into the tomb's door to open it. After a second, the door started to open by having the metal plates that made up the door start to retract, starting from where his hand had been and moving outwards so that beings much larger than him could walk through and view the deceased Cybertronian, After the metal plates had settled, Naruto beckoned Optimus, and Ratchet come in as he started to walk inside. After a few steps, Ratchet and Optimus came upon the body on the giant metal slab, the body of Nominus Prime, the former leader of their people and one of the original Cybertronians killed in the first waves of Decepticon violence. Naruto looked up at them as they took in the sight of their former leader. I know this is kinda a heavy moment, but could you maybe lift me up onto slab so I can show you what I've been able to complete in repairs? He asked in a soft voice. After Naruto had said something, the two Autobots seemed to snap out of their trance, and Optimus knelt down with his hand open to allow their human companion to get a ride up to the burial slab. His body seems in fairly good condition considering he was believed killed in an explosion, Ratchet remarked as he began scanning the body to see which systems needed to be fixed or replaced. When he was done, he found that only a few systems needed to be fixed or replaced in order for the body to function for their new ally. Yeah, when I found him he looked pretty good except for a few broken pieces of armor that I was able to fix with some energon welding, Naruto said, approaching the bot and rubbing his years-long project. After finishing his body scan, Ratchet turned to his leader and said, "Yes, that would explain some of the irregularities in the armor that I found that showed they were being held together in a way that wouldn't allow them to come off again unless under extreme stress. Interesting. It seems that we have everything we need to fix Nominus' body at the base, Optimus," he reported. Ratchet then extended his hand for Naruto to jump on, and the group started to leave the tomb. "Bumblebee, we need a ground bridge at our current location," Optimus said as he accessed his communications, and a ground bridge opened up not far ahead, and the group started to head through as the tomb closed itself back up after they had left its confines. Optimus had grabbed Nominus's body and thrown one arm over his shoulder, saying, "Good, let's load up the body and start to head home." At the back of the main area of the base, Optimus placed Nominus's body on an operating table near the energon tank. Ratchet had placed his hand on the human walking area while he was doing this so Naruto could get off and resume his normal tasks and begin considering what to do with the body that was now on his operating table. Suddenly a beep beep sounded, and when he looked up, he realized that it was a warning that one of their team members was in danger because a sudden drop in their life signal was detected. He thought it was a glitch in this blasted human technology, but when he looked up, he realized it wasn't, and his spark fell in fear. "What's wrong, Ratchet?" Seeing the look of fear on Ratchet's face, Naruto yelled, sprinting as close as he could to the grizzled medbot. "Optimus, you need to see this," Ratchet said, ignoring the guy in front of him who was trying to catch a peek of the display by leaning over the safety railing. Optimus went up to his old friend and looked at the monitor, a worried expression on his face. "Have all outgoing Autobots returned to base? One of our own is in need of help," Optimus said, addressing the squad scout and ordering him to begin combat preparation. Naruto asked, "Optimus, what's wrong? Why do the others need to come back to base?" Because he had not received a response from Ratchet and was beginning to worry. "It's Cliff Jumper, his life signal is dropping rapidly," Optimus said, looking worriedly at him. Naruto asked, "What does that mean?" fearing the reaction he anticipated. "It means that Cliff Jumper is gravely injured from fighting Decepticons," said Optimus.